Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today we're going to be discussing a philosophy type of thing. Once again, things are happening in the OnlyFins Discord server, which by the way, if you have not already joined in, the link is in the description below. It's only $3 a month to join to get some of the best Dolphins talk as well as inside knowledge from the 3 yards per carry crew. So now the discussion being had is a little sneak peek into what kind of things are being discussed amongst the fan base right now. Does talent override scheme fit? And this has very important connotations, not just for free agency, not just for the roster in general, but for the draft as well, because there are a lot of really good prospects that we potentially may be overlooking simply because they don't necessarily fit what the Miami Dolphins are projected to be doing. And at what point does the level of talent that a player has, their level of performance in college, in the pros, wherever, at what point does that override the scheme? And we're going to be discussing the ins and outs, the pros and cons of this sort of thing. But before we get too far into that, just want to go ahead and quickly mention that this show is brought to you by our friends and sponsors at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. You ever park too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, or curb rash. Or maybe are your wheels faded or peeling? You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new, offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing. You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, maybe a Dolphins themed one, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. It's up to you to decide. All you have to do is choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. So if you think that Sandy Alcantara of the Miami Marlins will get more than 6 strikeouts per game, you can just do that. They can give you free squares, they'll give you special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials to where you get your money back if you lose, or you can multiply the amount of money you can normally win. With offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up at this point. So use the promo code FIVE, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5 F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, get started right now, and start playing on their dime so you can start winning some big time cash. So now we get into the discussion that's going on OnlyFins right now, because again, if you haven't jumped in there yet, you're missing out on a lot of really good stuff and a lot of theoretical discussions that can really get you to thinking. So at what point does scheme fit become more important than talent? That's a question that you have to ask yourself really carefully as a Miami Dolphins fan, because there was a player who we all thought was extremely talented, who we still think to some extent is extremely talented, and I'm sure that we wish him all the best. That is tight end Mike Gesicki, who is now a member of the New England Patriots. And there is a very distinct possibility that with New England and Mac Jones at quarterback, Mike Gesicki might find a resurgence for his career. Not because Mac Jones is a better quarterback or anything along those lines, but simply because it's possible that the play style that the Patriots may have for him may be better attuned to what it is that he's good at. He is not a blocker. He is a pass-catching tight end. And for whatever reason, Mike McDaniel's scheme did not work for him. It was not what he was asked to do. It was not what he was good at. And so it just didn't work for Mike Gesicki in Miami under Mike McDaniel's scheme. So if that is the case, does that mean that his talent did not matter? That the simple fact of the matter is that Mike Gesicki's talent was not enough to overcome the lack of a scheme fit? So does that mean that talent is not the end-all be-all? Let's just take a moment to look at some numbers here. So you have Mike Gesicki and you have Durham Smythe. Let's go side by side. In 2022, Mike Gesicki, in the 17 games that he played, so he played in every game, he caught 32 passes for 362 yards. He was 11.3 yards per reception, and he caught 5 touchdowns. So for him, that's an extremely down year because we've seen him do much better. In fact, just 1 year prior, when it was still Brian Flores who was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he caught 73 passes for 780 yards. He only caught 2 touchdowns, but the numbers, as far as the statistics go, how often he was used, how many times he was targeted 112 times in 2021. He was only targeted 52 times in 2022. And we've discussed this before, but the downfall of Mike Gesicki in Miami seemed to be everything to do with just the number of times that the scheme came into play. Mike Gesicki was being asked to do things he wasn't good at. And granted, I have to give him credit. He tried his darndest, but it's just not his thing. Meanwhile, you have Durham Smythe. So here's Durham Smythe. He played in 16 games, so he did miss 1 game. Okay, no big deal, 1 game. The entire year, he caught 15 catches for 129 yards and a single touchdown. Think about that for a second. Even then, in 2021, Durham Smythe was doing more. Because in 2020 and 2021, let's look at 2020 for Durham Smythe. He caught 26 passes for 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then in 2021, he caught 34 passes for 357 yards. Granted, no touchdowns. But in 2021, it seemed to be the year of the tight end for the Miami Dolphins. And then in 2022, his stats went down, but his overall snap count went up. Because watch this now. Because here's where it gets interesting. So, who's the better scheme fit in this offense? Is it Mike Gesicki or is it Durham Smythe? If you look at just the plain old stats, you would say, well, Mike Gesicki contributed more. But that's if you're only just looking at numbers, if you're looking at fantasy points. If you look at the snap counts, Mike Gesicki, even though he played an extra game, he played 1 more game than Durham Smythe did. Mike Gesicki had 478 snaps on offense. Meanwhile, on offense, and I have to make that distinction because between the two of them, Durham Smythe actually played special teams. Mike Gesicki played 1 snap on special teams in 2022. So Durham Smythe, on offense, had 557 snaps. That's over half the amount of snaps that the Miami Dolphins offense had for the entire season. And that's not even counting the 178 snaps that he had on special teams. So who was able to contribute more to what the Miami Dolphins were trying to do this last year? It wasn't Mike Gesicki, that's for sure. But who is the more talented player? Nobody in their right mind is going to sit here and say that Durham Smythe is a better tight end than Mike Gesicki. You could argue that Durham Smythe is more balanced, that he's able to do more because he can be more versatile. He knows how to block. That's something he's very good at. And if asked, he can catch the football. So that's, again, we make the Deion Sims comparison. Deion Sims, when he was drafted, he was not necessarily the pass-catching superstar that we were hoping somebody like a Jordan Cameron would have been, or even a Dustin Keller. I remember when the Dolphins signed him. But he was solid. He was good. But it was his blocking that put him on the map, so to speak. Now we have Durham Smythe doing the exact same thing, and it seems to me they just extended him, right? Mind you, the Miami Dolphins, Durham Smythe, they just extended him. So you have to wonder if that's the idea here. Is the scheme fit is more important than the talent. But then you look at the draft coming up, right? And the 3 yards per carry crew, I always look to them when I'm looking for something interesting because they always have a certain level of insight that other people don't always offer when they do their analysis, and that's what makes going to OnlyFins so worth it, because you can just watch the back and forth happen, and you can kind of read and analyze, and you'll be able to do your own research after the fact. So I went ahead and I took a look in what they were saying, and some of the things they were saying had to do a lot with what the draft is. So there's at least one player that could potentially be available for the Miami Dolphins if they felt so inclined as to look into him. But he's being overlooked because he's not necessarily a scheme fit. Take a look at DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State. This dude is a monster. He's huge, okay? And I'm not talking about, he's just a really big dude as far as his height goes. No, this dude is big. Like, picture Orlando Brown, right? This dude is giant, and he's slow like one, too. And yet, you watch his film, and the 3 yards per carry crew did a great job of highlighting this. there's not a whole lot of stuff that he can't do. He's a big dude. He's very physically imposing. He knows how to run block, which, considering what the Miami Dolphins have had to do to try to get that run game going last season, would be a boon to what exactly this offense needs to do. And he, of all the players that you could potentially get, because we've talked about Matthew Bergeron, we talked about Tyler Steen before, and how they're project players. Granted, DeJuan Jones would be something of a project as well, but if you had to pick and choose who's the most ready guy right now that could legitimately be in play for the Miami Dolphins, even if they had to trade up a little bit, there have been reports that the Miami Dolphins would be willing to trade up if the right player fell to them. And that could be someone like a DeJuan Jones. Who knows? And if you really want to fix the right tackle position, like if you really are that desperate, and you're looking at Austin Jackson, and you're looking at Liam Eichenberg, and you're looking at who the Miami Dolphins have to compete with them, you're looking at Kendall Lamb and saying, yeah, I'm not buying that you're suddenly this great player. If you're looking at the likes of the free agents out there, if you're not looking to make a reunion with the likes of Billy Turner or anything along those lines, picking up someone like a DeJuan Jones, even though he doesn't necessarily fit the scheme, because what is it that the Miami Dolphins need at offensive line? You would say probably someone like the lines of, at least in terms of actual physicality as far as his frame, you would look at someone like an Austin Jackson, because it's athleticism, it's speed, it's the ability to get in space and get moving. You're not a brick wall who can't move and just sits there like a turnstile. There have been players like that the Dolphins have gotten their hands on. You could argue that Solomon Kinley was someone like that. He was slow. He was not fast. And he didn't fit the scheme. Again, fitting the scheme. That's the key here. But at what point, you have to ask yourself, does the talent level become more important than the scheme fit? Because there are a lot of good players that don't necessarily fit the scheme that can still make a huge impact. And likewise, there are players that do fit the scheme, Chase Edmonds, at least on paper, that ultimately don't accomplish much for whatever reason. Chase Edmonds, as the 3 yards per carry crew talked about during their podcast, and as many other people have highlighted over the course of the offseason last year, Chase Edmonds was the perfect fit for what the Dolphins were going to be wanting to do. They wanted to be able to make catches out of the backfield. They were looking for somebody who could get the job done in space. Chase Edmonds was that to a T, and we all know how that turned out. He was traded mid-season, and we ended up picking up Jeff Wilson instead, and that actually turned out to be the better option for the Dolphins. Chase Edmonds did almost nothing of note. He couldn't catch any passes. He seemed to have hands of stone for whatever reason. But that doesn't change the fact that Chase Edmonds on paper was a perfect scheme fit. The scheme fit was there. The production wasn't. Now here we have DeJuan Jones, who is a fantastic player based on everything that we've seen in his tape. But he doesn't fit the scheme of what the Miami Dolphins are trying to do. Is it worth it to take a chance and look at this guy and say, you know what, you don't really fit the prototype of what this offense is trying to do, but we've seen your tape, we've seen what you're capable of, and we're going to see if we can make it work with you because you just seem to be that good. That's something that the Miami Dolphins would be very wise to heavily consider in this draft. I am still of the opinion that the best thing they can do right now is to go for a tight end, because they need somebody other than Durham Smythe to be able to get the job done. Now, maybe they really like Durham Smythe. They did just extend him. But I would think that they need to look into the future and say they need to get somebody who's more valuable, who has the potential to be someone special in the future if given the proper tools. Because Durham Smythe, as I want to give him all the respect in the world, he's made a great career for himself so far, but he's not a superstar tight end, not by any stretch. Not to reiterate, but this does remind me of when the Dolphins had Deion Sims, and he was a good player. I liked him. I thought he was a really good contributor, but he wasn't somebody that I was looking at and saying, yep, you know what, this guy is our tight end for the future. And that ended up being the case because he then went on to go to the Chicago Bears, signed a 3-year contract with them, and eventually retired a few years later. So that was the end of that. And again, he was a good player. So once again, scheme fit versus talent. Just in a vacuum, my opinion, you find good players and you make a way to make it work. In Mike Gesicki's case, it didn't work. They tried. I know that they did. But Mike Gesicki, as talented as he is at what he does, he's really only good at one thing. And truly talented players, you have to be able to do more than just one thing. I'll use the offensive line as an example. Let's say that you are an elite left tackle, right? You have really good potential left tackle. You've had really great tape, a fantastic career as a left tackle. But every single time you've been shifted to a different position, whether that's guard or center, or even if you just have to flip to right tackle, you are absolutely terrible. You are a liability on that offensive line. You still are worth investing in because at the very least, you know how to run block at left tackle. You can pass protect at left tackle. Everything that a left tackle needs to do, you do it to such an amazing degree that you are worth it because you're just that good. That's the kind of talent who is good at doing one thing, because it's not one skill. It's not one trait. It is one position that you absolutely lock down because you are just that good at it. You're worth investing in. Now, let's say you can play every position and you can run block really well, but as soon as you're asked to pass block, you are a liability. I don't care at that point if you can play every position, because we can't only do one thing. You have to be able to do both things. You have to be able to run block and you have to pass block. And every attempt to teach you has failed. That's how I have to look at Mike Gesicki. Because in Mike Gesicki's case, again, Mike Gesicki is a really, really talented pass catcher, especially when it comes to doing like acrobatics and stuff like that. But as a run blocker, as any kind of blocker for that matter, Mike Gesicki is a liability. So the only thing he is good for is catching passes. So as soon as you see him on the field, you know what the offense is going to do, if they have any hope of making him do something good. Because if you decide to subvert expectations and you turn him into a blocker, well, all your linebacker or your defensive end or your tackle has to do is run Gesicki over and your quarterback is toast. That's not a good thing. That's why Mike Gesicki, I view him as talented, but he's not indispensable. So at his point, the scheme fit is more important. Somebody like a DeJuan Jones, on the other hand, he doesn't fit the scheme, but he has a lot of talent that he can do pretty much everything you could ask of him. And that is the kind of talent that I would look at and say, I want to see what you can do before I just go ahead and write you off because you don't fit my scheme. Who knows? Maybe he's just that talented that the scheme fit ultimately doesn't matter. It's happened before. And if the Miami Dolphins really want to push for a Super Bowl, you might be willing to take that risk to see if it can happen again. We're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you haven't already gone to do so, go ahead and check out our friends and sponsors at You Break Wheel Fix. If you're looking to get your car customized with some new custom wheels so you can show off your Dolphins fandom, go ahead just south of Aventura. Reach out to Mark and his staff at You Break Wheel Fix. The number is 305-748-0112. Again, that is 305-748-0112. Or you can just check them out online at youbreakwheelfix.com, or check out any of their social media platforms at You Break Wheel Fix on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to get an estimate in just minutes. Go to You Break Wheel Fix and start making your ride look like the ultimate Dolphins dream ride today. And of course, go to PricePicks.com, use that promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E. Today is Taco Tuesday as you are listening to this, so if you haven't already gone over there to check and see what kind of discounted picks they're offering over there at Price Picks, once again, go over there, sign up using our promo code, that's 5, F-I-V-E. They will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up using our promo code. So you put in $100, Price Picks will immediately give you $100 of promo funds for you to play with, so you're basically starting out on their dime. So if you play your cards right, you can start things off with a bang by winning Taco Tuesday and making some big time cash to add to your pocket just by them giving you those extra funds. So once again, that's promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, PricePicks.com, our longtime sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We're really glad to have them, and we hope to have them long into the future. That's going to be it. Thank you all so much for joining me. We will see you all tomorrow for more Fins Nation.